The Replacements Chapter 1. The Awakening. In the luminous heart of Los Angeles, Dorian Blackwood sat alone. In his high-rise apartment, scrutinizing the peculiar wrinkles etched in his hand. He was Hollywood's golden boy, a charming actor with an enchanting voice that echoed through cinema halls, captivating millions. But tonight, his charismatic allure was masked by a strange sense of unease. A knock interrupted his thoughts, and a courier handed him a peculiarly ornate envelope, adorned with a single phrase, "The Replacements." It contained a cryptic message and an address. The message, however, was chillingly clear: it's time for the world to see the new Dorian. As Dorian's world started to whirl, his mind was flooded with rumors he had dismissed earlier. Whispers of The Replacements, a shadowy organization that was rumored to clone high-profile individual singers, actors, writers, anyone with a unique talent or ability that made them influential. In this new world order, your value wasn't just your talent, but your potential as a moldable asset. A tool to sway the masses, to stir sentiments, and ultimately control the world. The Replacements were not just physical clones. They were ideological duplicates, designed to push forward a unified global narrative. And now, it appeared, Dorian was their next target. The burning questions in his mind were relentless. Was there already a clone of him out there? How could he fight an enemy that was essentially him? As Dorian gazed at his reflection, he couldn't help but question if he was looking at himself, or a preview of his own replacement. From that moment on, his life was on a precipice, teetering between the world he knew and the ominous unknown. The stakes had never been higher, and the role he was about to play, unlike any he had ever prepared for. Dorian realized it wasn't just about him anymore. He needed to expose the reality behind the Replacements before they transformed the world, one clone at a time. Chapter 2. Shadows and Doubts. In the dawn's subtle glow, Dorian decided to investigate. With the cryptic message and address as his only leads, he ventured into the heart of the city's underworld, where secrets were currency, and silence, a sacred oath. The address led him to a dilapidated warehouse nestled between towering buildings. As he pushed open the rusty door, he was greeted by a sudden coldness that caused him to shiver, the kind of coldness that emanated not from the temperature, but from a chilling sense of foreboding. The warehouse was filled with remnants of old Hollywood props, costumes, and discarded scripts. Yet, it also held an eerie silence, as if it was the graveyard for the city's forgotten dreams. As he ventured further in, Dorian discovered a secret door, hidden behind a moth-eaten velvet curtain. Beyond the door was a pristine lab, teeming with advanced tech. In the middle, a colossal machine hummed ominously, the words "Genetic Duplicator 3000" etched onto its side. The stark contrast between the warehouse's decay and the lab's cutting-edge technology was jarring. Suddenly, a screen flickered on. Images flashed rapidly, artists, politicians, scientists, all influential figures. A haunting realization hit Dorian. These were the Replacements, their lives, their talents, cloned and exploited to manipulate the public's psyche. His face was the next to flash on the screen, sending a jolt of fear through him. The reality of his predicament was more horrifying than he had imagined. How could he possibly contend with an enemy who knew his every move, his every thought, his every weakness? As Dorian left the lab, he was clouded with doubt and unease. If the Replacements had their way, the world would no longer be a stage for free will and creativity, but a chessboard where cloned puppets danced to their masters' tunes. His journey had just begun. Dorian knew he had to dig deeper to understand the true magnitude of the Replacements' operation. And most importantly, he had to find a way to expose them before he became just another face on that screen. Chapter 3. Allies in the Unseen. Dorian had always been a loner, both in his personal life and on set. But he knew he couldn't face this monstrous organization alone. He needed allies, someone who could understand the terror of the replacements, someone who might have been targeted too. He decided to reach out to Leela, an indie singer-songwriter who had recently skyrocketed to fame. Leela was not just known for her unique sound, but for her fierce independence and refusal to conform to industry standards. Dorian arranged to meet Leela at a discreet location, a hidden gem of a cafe, lost in the city's labyrinthine back alleys. He hoped she would be willing to listen, and perhaps share his fight. As he explained the situation to Leela, he could see the color drain from her face. She, too, had received a similar envelope and was terrified but clueless. The reality that she could be cloned, that her creativity could be usurped by a machine, shook her to her core. With Leela on board, Dorian felt a renewed sense of hope. They were two against an unknown army, yet they had something the replacements didn't: the unpredictability of the human spirit. Together, they formed a plan. Their first task was to gather more information about the replacements and identify their next targets. They needed to reach out, to form an alliance strong enough to take on the shadowy organization. As Dorian left the cafe, he realized that he was no longer alone in his fight. Despite the looming threat, he felt an unfamiliar sense of camaraderie. For the first time since he received the cryptic message, he didn't feel like a hunted man, but a part of a resistance. Unknown to them, their actions had triggered an alarm in the replacements' headquarters. They were now officially a threat, and it was only a matter of time before the replacements retaliated. Chapter 4: Faces in the Mirror. Leela and Dorian spent the following weeks reaching out to other artists who might have been targets. Some dismissed them as delusional. Others were too afraid to get involved, but a few braved the uncertainty and joined their cause. Their alliance now included Kali, a renowned poet whose words inspired a generation, and Max, an influential novelist whose stories questioned societal norms. Their talents made them perfect targets for the replacements. While the alliance was growing, so was the pressure from the replacements. Subtle threats began to infiltrate their lives, from cryptic messages warning them to back off, to intimidating figures, tailing their every move. Unsettling as this was, the most chilling encounter was yet to come. Dorian had just returned to his apartment one night when he found an unexpected guest waiting. A man who wore his face, voice, and even mannerisms. His clone, a living testament to the power of the replacements. The clone spoke in a tone that was both chilling and cordial. "We are not your enemies, Dorian. We are the next step, the evolution. Your talent, our shared talent, can be used to steer the world towards a unified future." Dorian was torn between fear and fascination. He was staring at a mirror image of himself, yet something was off. The clone had his face, but it lacked the depth that years of life experiences had carved into him. The clone was him, yet not him. When he shared this experience with the Alliance, they realized the extent of the threat they were up against. The replacements weren't just after their physical identities, but their creative spirits as well. They had to act fast before their clones could replace them in the world's eyes. Their fight had just taken a grave, personal turn. Chapter 5: Tides of Treason. Their alliance now found a new sense of urgency. They decided it was time to expose the replacements, to bring their shadowy operations into the light. Leela, being the most tech-savvy among them, suggested they hack into the replacements database and leak their plans to the world. With the task set, they began formulating a plan. Max, with his knack for crafting intricate plots, devised an intricate strategy. Kali, a master of persuasion, started rallying support from other influential figures discreetly, creating an unseen network of allies. Meanwhile, Dorian was haunted by his encounter with his clone. The very notion of being replaced by a duplicate unsettled him. His reflection, once a source of reassurance, now filled him with dread. As they delved deeper into their mission, their lives took a dramatic turn. The replacements had begun to assert their influence. Max's latest book was banned without any plausible explanation. Leela's songs mysteriously disappeared from streaming platforms. Kali's poetry readings were abruptly cancelled. Yet, the most significant blow came from within their alliance. A leaked video showed Dorian, or rather his clone, discrediting their claims about the replacements. The video went viral, tainting their credibility. Stunned by this betrayal, they realized one chilling fact: their enemy wasn't just the replacements. They were also fighting against their identical clones, who were ready to ruin their reputations to fulfill the replacements' sinister plans. Their alliance was now standing on shaky ground, grappling with their doubles' betrayals and public skepticism. Yet, their resolve remained unbroken. They knew they had to fight back, to reclaim their identities, and save the world from a future of manipulated talents and suppressed individuality. Chapter 6: Unseen Horrors. The blow from Dorian's clone had shaken them, but it also steeled their determination. They knew they couldn't combat their clones in the public eye. They had to strike at the heart of the operation, the replacement's headquarters. With Leela's tech skills and the combined brainpower of Max and Kali, they were able to locate the possible location of the replacement's main lab. A seemingly abandoned movie studio in the outskirts of the city, it was the perfect disguise for their insidious operation. Under the cloak of darkness, they infiltrated the facility. They navigated through endless corridors filled with eerie silence until they stumbled upon a room that held their worst fears. Lined up in glass cases were numerous clones, eerily lifelike, ready to step into their originals' lives. The sight of their mirror images, devoid of their life experiences and personal growth, was haunting. It was as if they were staring into a distorted reality where they existed but had no control, no autonomy, no identity. As they ventured deeper into the facility, they discovered more unsettling realities. The replacements weren't just cloning their bodies, but also their minds. They had a sophisticated system to extract their memories, experiences, and even their creative thought processes, creating near-perfect duplicates. Yet, the clones were not exact copies. Each was programmed to align with the replacement's ultimate goal, a new world order. A world devoid of individuality, creativity, and freedom. The horrifying reality hit them: this was not just about them. It was about the very essence of human uniqueness being threatened. They had to stop this, not just for themselves, but for the world that cherished their art and their individuality. Chapter 7: The Rebellion Ignites. Now that they'd seen the full scale of the replacements operation, their mission took on a newfound urgency. They decided to act immediately, to expose the replacements before they could replace more artists and thinkers. Kali began writing an expose, using her poetic eloquence to weave a powerful narrative. Leela worked on decrypting sensitive information from the replacements database, while Max used his storytelling prowess to create a compelling visual narrative that would grip the public. As they worked tirelessly, Dorian took on the task of rallying public support. Using his acting skills, he began subtly hinting at the existence of the replacements during interviews, planting seeds of doubt in people's minds. Their work bore fruit when they successfully leaked the replacements' plans and operation details to the world. The news spread like wildfire, causing a massive public outcry. People were horrified by the thought of their favorite artists and influential figures being replaced by clones. The replacements, caught off guard, started losing their grip. They tried to discredit the leaks, but the evidence was too compelling to ignore. Simultaneously, their alliance rallied more members, creating a wave of rebellion against the replacements. The unity and collective strength of artists, writers, and other influential figures from all around the world was a sight to behold. Their fight had started a revolution, a rebellion that was about reclaiming their identities and preserving human uniqueness. The world was finally awakening to the horror of the replacements, and they were ready to resist. The stage was set for a showdown that would determine the fate of creativity and individuality in the world. Chapter 8: Battle of Identities. As the rebellion gained momentum, the replacements escalated their efforts. More clones began to surface, causing confusion and chaos. Yet, the Alliance held strong, countering each move with the truth about their clones. Meanwhile, a more personal battle was brewing. Dorian was confronted by his clone once again, this time in public. Their striking resemblance caused a media frenzy. Yet, Dorian stood his ground, addressing the world about the reality of his clone and the nefarious operations of the replacements. The confrontation was a symbolic one, representing the struggle of authenticity against mimicry, originality against imitation, and freedom against control. Dorian's brave stance not only won public support, but also inspired other members of the Alliance to confront their clones publicly. Leela, Max, and Kali followed suit, confronting their clones and reaffirming their authenticity. These confrontations exposed the public to the stark differences between the originals and their clones, despite their physical similarities. With the truth out in the open, public sentiment turned against the replacements. People started to see through the clones' superficial resemblances, appreciating the depth and richness of the originals. The tide was turning, and the Alliance felt a surge of hope. However, the replacements were not ready to concede defeat. They made one final, desperate move, releasing a clone of a world leader in an attempt to seize global control. The Alliance had anticipated such a move and was prepared. They leaked proof of the leader's cloning, resulting in a worldwide uproar. This audacious attempt by the replacements was the last straw for the public, leading to the organization's downfall. The replacements' operation was exposed, their labs shut down, and their clones deactivated. The battle of identities had been won, but the war to safeguard human uniqueness and creativity was far from over. The Alliance knew they had to stay vigilant, ensuring that no such threat would ever rise again. Chapter 9: Victory and Vigilance. In the aftermath of the battle, the world was a changed place. The replacements had left a lasting impact, prompting a global dialogue about the value of individuality, creativity, and the perils of cloning. The Alliance members, once targets, were now hailed as heroes. Their courage and determination had not only saved them from being replaced, but had also preserved the essence of human individuality. Dorian, Leela, Max, and Kali, along with the other members, continued their fight in a different way. They used their influence to advocate for laws preventing such abuses of technology, and championed the importance of creativity and individuality in society. They founded an organization, Guardians of Originality, dedicated to monitoring any threats to human individuality, and acting as a beacon of inspiration for artists worldwide. The once covert alliance had now become a global initiative, safeguarding the future of creativity and freedom of thought. Yet, they knew their victory wasn't absolute. The replacements had been disbanded, but the technology they used still existed. There was always a chance that someone, somewhere, might attempt something similar. Despite the victory, their vigilance remained. They vowed to continue their fight, to ensure that the world would never have to face the threat of being replaced again. This was their legacy, a testament to their resilience and their unwavering commitment to preserving human individuality. Their story served as a reminder to the world that no clone could ever replace the richness and depth of a truly lived life. Chapter 10: Echoes of the Past. As the world moved on, the memories of the replacements began to fade into the annals of history. The scars, however, remain. The Alliance members continued to feel the echoes of the past, a constant reminder of what they had fought for and what they had almost lost. Dorian found himself taking on roles that challenged the very idea of identity and humanity, driven by the personal connection he felt with those themes. Leela's music took a darker, more introspective turn, reflecting her struggles and triumphs during the battle. Max wrote a novel based on their experiences, a gripping tale that made readers question the essence of self. Collie's poems became a voice for those who felt suppressed and marginalized, inspiring a new generation to value their uniqueness. The Guardians of Originality thrived, creating a network of artists and thinkers who were committed to preserving the authenticity of human creativity. Yet, despite their success, a shadow lingered. Unknown to the Alliance, a remnant of the Replacements had survived. Hidden in the dark corners of the world, they quietly worked to resurrect their agenda. The technology was still there, waiting to be harnessed again. As the Alliance celebrated the anniversary of their victory, a message arrived. A cryptic warning, eerily similar to the one that had started it all. The battle had been won, but the war was not over. The Replacements were still out there, biding their time, waiting for the right moment to strike again. A new chapter was about to begin, and the Alliance knew that they must remain vigilant, ready to defend the sanctity of human individuality and creativity. The fight was far from over, and they were prepared to face whatever lay ahead together. The echoes of the past had become a call to action for the future. Chapter 11: The Replacements' Victory. In the shadows, the Replacements celebrated a small yet significant victory. They had successfully cloned a renowned scientist, the mind behind groundbreaking research in the field of genetics. The scientist's clone now held his place, subtly steering his research towards their goals. Unbeknownst to the Guardians of Originality, the Replacements had changed their strategy. Instead of replacing public figures and artists, they now focused on individuals of influence in scientific and technological fields. Their plan was to control technological advancement and scientific research, paving the way for a world order they envisioned. Their new strategy was frighteningly effective. The public remained unaware, their eyes more attuned to artists and influential figures rather than the unsung heroes of science. This gave the Replacements the cover they needed to advance their plans. Meanwhile, the Guardians of Originality remained vigilant, still expecting the Replacements to strike at artists and public figures as they had done before. They closely monitored their own, unaware that the danger was growing elsewhere. The Replacements quietly celebrated their victory, cherishing the irony. The Alliance, once their greatest adversaries, were now unwittingly helping them by diverting attention away from their actual targets. The Replacements were one step closer to their new world order, all under the watchful eyes of their enemies. The Alliance's battle cry of preserving human individuality and creativity, while still crucial, was no longer the only front on which this war was being fought. The Replacements had moved the battleground, shifting the focus to technological and scientific dominance, the keys to control the future. Chapter 12: The Deadly Design. The Replacement scheme took an even more sinister turn as they set in motion a plan that threatened humanity itself. They aimed to harness the breakthroughs in genetics research, made possible by their newly cloned scientist, to engineer a devastating bioweapon. Their ultimate goal was to eliminate 50% of Earth's population, paving the way for a new world order populated and governed by their clones. Their plan hinged on a genetically engineered virus, designed to be highly contagious, yet leaving their clones unaffected. This would result in a world where their clones would outnumber the remaining human population, allowing them to seize control and establish their version of order. Behind closed doors, in highly secured labs, the scientist's clone and his team worked tirelessly on this dark project. The Replacements viewed this as their ultimate victory. Not only would they have control over human individuality and creativity, but they would also hold sway over life and death. while the Guardians of Originality were focused on safeguarding the realms of art and culture. The Replacements were playing a different game altogether. The stakes were higher, the threats more significant, and the world remained blissfully unaware of the looming danger. The battle to preserve human uniqueness had evolved into a desperate struggle for survival. The Replacements' plan, if successful, threatened to reshape the world as we know it, heralding a future where individuality would be erased, and humanity would be under the control of a single, monolithic entity. The stage was set for a confrontation unlike any other, one that would test the Guardians of Originality to their limits and beyond. Their fight was no longer just about protecting individuality. It was about safeguarding humanity itself. Chapter 13: The Dark Days. The Replacements unleashed their deadly weapon, and the world fell into chaos. The virus spread rapidly, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. It was unlike anything the world had seen before, highly contagious, lethal, and seemingly unstoppable. Millions fell ill, their bodies unable to fight the engineered pathogen. Hospitals were overwhelmed, cities turned into ghost towns, and the world held its breath, praying for a miracle. The Replacements watched from the shadows as their plan unfolded, their clones safe from the deadly pathogen. As the death toll rose, so did their control. Their sinister vision was slowly becoming a reality. The Guardians of Originality watched in horror as the world descended into chaos. The scale of devastation was beyond anything they had anticipated. They realized too late that their old adversaries were behind this calamity. This realization sparked a new resolve within them. Their mission was no longer just about protecting individuality or creativity. It was about saving humanity. They knew they had to act swiftly, to fight this unseen enemy that was decimating the world's population. While the world grappled with the pandemic, the Guardians of Originality geared up for their most significant challenge yet. They had to find a way to stop the virus and expose the Replacements' nefarious plan to the world. The world was on its knees, and the future seemed bleak. But in these dark times, hope persisted. The Guardians of Originality knew they had a formidable fight ahead, but they were determined to save humanity from the clutches of the Replacements. Chapter 14: The Search for a Cure. With the world at stake, the Guardians of Originality rallied their resources to combat the virus. They enlisted the help of brilliant scientists and researchers from their network, all sworn to secrecy about the true origins of the virus. Working around the clock, their goal was twofold. 1. They aimed to develop a cure to counteract the deadly pathogen. 2. They needed to gather evidence tying the virus back to the Replacements. Both tasks were formidable, but failure was not an option. Simultaneously, they launched an information campaign subtly hinting at a conspiracy behind the virus. They had to tread carefully, as their accusations, without concrete evidence, could easily be dismissed as a conspiracy theory, doing more harm than good. In the hidden labs, progress was slow and frustrating. The virus was unlike any they had encountered before, a testament to its engineered origins. But every setback only steeled their resolve. The team of researchers, driven by their shared goal, worked tirelessly, drawing on every resource available. Finally, after weeks of relentless work, they made a breakthrough. They isolated a compound that could inhibit the virus's spread in the body. While it wasn't a complete cure, it was a significant first step. But the fight was far from over. They needed to produce the compound on a massive scale and distribute it worldwide, a logistical challenge in itself. Despite the progress, the evidence linking the virus to the Replacements remained elusive. The Guardians of Originality knew they had a long way to go before they could expose the true villains behind this catastrophe. As the world grappled with despair, a glimmer of hope emerged. They were one step closer to saving humanity, and they wouldn't stop until they had brought the Replacements to justice. Chapter 15: Shadows of Truth. With a potential cure in their hands, the Guardians of Originality started the monumental task of mass production and distribution. They had allies across the globe, people of influence who could expedite the process. The network they'd built, initially to protect creativity, was now being leveraged to save humanity. As the first doses of the compound started reaching the most affected areas, the world saw a glimmer of hope. Death rates began to stabilize, and recovery rates improved. The compound wasn't a full cure, but it provided the respite the world desperately needed. Meanwhile, the quest for evidence against the replacements gained momentum. The Alliance was closing in, piecing together an intricate puzzle that pointed towards the truth. They discovered an anonymous whistleblower from within the replacements, willing to expose the organization's nefarious activities. This was the break they had been waiting for. The whistleblower, codenamed Shadow, provided information that directly linked the replacements to the creation and release of the virus. Shadow revealed the existence of the clone scientist and his work. Armed with this information, the Guardians of Originality now had a tangible target. However, they also understood that revealing this information prematurely could lead to widespread panic. The world was just recovering from the initial shock of the virus. The truth about its origins could lead to chaos. They needed undeniable proof before they could make this public. Despite the progress, they knew they were in a race against time. The replacements were still out there, continuing their deadly mission. They had to be stopped, and the Guardians of Originality were the world's only hope. With the cure in progress, and the shadows of truth unveiling, the tide was slowly turning. But the Guardians of Originality knew that the hardest part of their fight was yet to come. Chapter 16: The Infiltration. Armed with Shadow's information, the Guardians of Originality hatched a daring plan to infiltrate the replacement's secret labs. They aimed to gather irrefutable proof of their activities and, if possible, sabotage their operations. Their chosen agent was Max, who had once been a target for replacement. He had proven himself not just as a writer, but as a critical part of their operations. Max, trained in stealth and equipped with advanced technology provided by the Alliance, was prepared to embark on this risky mission. He infiltrated the facility under the guise of a maintenance worker, blending seamlessly with the lab's everyday operations. Every move, every step was calculated. The goal was clear: gather evidence and disrupt the replacement's operations without alerting them to his presence. Max discovered chilling details of the replacement's plan: the cloning technology, the engineered virus, and the horrifying plan to eliminate 50% of the Earth's population. He gathered physical evidence, including data files, samples, and photographs. In the heart of the facility, he found the production center for the deadly virus. Summoning his courage, he introduced a sabotage code provided by one of their tech experts into the system. The code would slowly corrupt the virus production, rendering the new batches ineffective. Max's mission was successful, but he knew the battle was far from over. The replacements still had reserves of the original virus and could still proceed with their plans unless fully stopped. As he stealthily left the facility, he felt a mix of fear and hope. The Guardians of Originality now had the proof they needed, but the revelation was chilling. The scale of the replacement's operation was much larger than they had anticipated. The world was on the brink, and they were the only ones who could tip the balance in favor of humanity. Chapter 17: Elations and Resolutions. Max returned from his mission unscathed, bringing with him evidence that would shake the world. The Guardians of Originality sifted through the chilling information, the scale of the replacement's plot sending shivers down their spines. Dorian, Leela, and Kali began planning their next move. They had to reveal the truth, but in a way that wouldn't plunge the world into panic. They strategized on how to bring this to light while continuing their efforts to combat the virus. Meanwhile, the compound developed by their scientists was showing promising results. Recovery rates were improving globally, and the once overwhelming fear was slowly starting to fade. Yet, they knew this was just the calm before the storm. The world was still in danger unless the replacements were stopped. They decided to share their information with the global authorities quietly. With the proof they'd obtained, they hoped to convince the authorities to act against the replacements. At the same time, they began a discreet media campaign to prepare the public for the truth. However, their efforts did not go unnoticed. Shadow sent an urgent message warning that the replacements had sensed a disturbance in their labs. They didn't know what had happened, but they knew something was wrong and were on high alert. The Guardians of Originality knew they had little time. Their fight against the replacements was reaching a critical point. They had to act swiftly to neutralize the threat before the replacements could retaliate. The revelation of the replacements' plot marked a turning point in their battle. The Guardians of Originality were now not only defenders of individuality and creativity, but also warriors in a fight for humanity's survival. Their resolve was stronger than ever. They would stop the replacements, no matter the cost. Chapter 18: Confrontation. With the evidence in the hands of global authorities, operations were initiated worldwide to apprehend members of the replacements. Simultaneously, the Guardians of Originality prepared for a confrontation. They knew that the replacements would not go down without a fight. Backed by the authorities, the Guardians of Originality took the fight to the replacements, targeting their key facilities. The element of surprise was on their side. Caught off guard, the replacements scrambled to respond, their carefully laid plans unraveling. However, they weren't an easy adversary. Retaliating fiercely, they defended their facilities, leading to intense confrontations. The world watched in shock as the truth about the replacements slowly unfolded, and the battle for humanity's survival played out. Meanwhile, Max had a separate mission. With the information provided by Shadow, he set out to find the clone scientist responsible for the virus. He aimed to apprehend him and, if possible, turn him to their side. The scientist's knowledge could prove invaluable in creating a full cure for the virus. The confrontation was fierce and filled with uncertainty, but the Guardians of Originality held their ground. They fought not just for individuality and creativity, but for the very essence of humanity. Their resolve was unwavering, their spirits unbroken. They would fight until the very end. This battle marked the beginning of the end. The Guardians of Originality were fully committed to defeating the replacements. The survival of humanity was hanging in the balance, and they were determined to tip the scale in their favor. Chapter 19: Turning the Tide. The world was in turmoil, caught in a battle they were just beginning to understand. The revelation of the replacements' agenda sent shockwaves globally. People were horrified, angry, but also inspired by the determined resistance of the Guardians of Originality. Max, meanwhile, had traced the scientist clone to a hidden facility. He managed to infiltrate the location, navigating through high-tech security systems and guards. Finally, he confronted the scientist, who surprisingly didn't resist. In fact, the clone seemed almost relieved. It was revealed that the scientist clone had grown increasingly disillusioned with the replacement's plans. He was originally created with the intention of advancing scientific knowledge. However, he was forced to develop a virus that could wipe out half of Earth's population. This internal struggle had caused him to question his creator's motives. Max convinced the clone scientist to join their cause, explaining the Guardians of Originality's mission. The scientist agreed, offering valuable insights into creating a full-fledged cure for the virus and ways to neutralize the remaining viral reserves of the replacements. The tide was slowly turning in favor of the Guardians of Originality. With the clone scientist on their side and the replacements on the defensive, victory seemed within reach. However, they knew that the replacements wouldn't go down without a final fight. They had to brace for the final confrontation, one that would decide the fate of humanity. The world watched in anticipation, pinning their hopes on the Guardians of Originality. As the struggle intensified, so did the resolve of the Guardians. They had come too far to back down now. They would fight until the end, for humanity, and for a world where individuality and creativity thrived. Chapter 20: The Final Fight. The final confrontation was imminent. The Guardians of Originality prepared for battle, their determination fueled by the knowledge that the world was behind them. The clone scientist provided invaluable assistance, helping them understand the replacements' remaining arsenal and devising strategies to counter them. Meanwhile, the replacements regrouped for a last stand. They launched a desperate counterattack, targeting major cities worldwide. The Guardians quickly responded, their allies and the global authorities mobilizing to protect the populations. The ensuing battle was fierce and brutal. On one side, the replacements, determined to bring their new world order into reality. And on the other, the Guardians of Originality, equally resolved to protect humanity's individuality and freedom. Max, Dorian, Leela, and Kali led their forces with unwavering courage, their conviction inspiring everyone around them. They fought fiercely, protecting cities from the onslaught and neutralizing replacements' facilities one by one. Simultaneously, the clone scientist and the team of researchers worked tirelessly to finalize the cure. They worked around the clock, knowing that every moment was crucial. Finally, with a collective sigh of relief, they succeeded. They had a full-fledged cure for the virus. As the news of the cure spread, it boosted the morale of the Guardians. Energized, they launched an all-out assault on the replacement's last stronghold. The battle was intense, but the Guardians prevailed, dismantling the final facility and capturing the remaining replacements. The world breathed a sigh of relief as the news of the Guardians' victory spread. The threat of the replacements was finally neutralized, and the virus was curable. The Guardians of Originality had not just saved individuality and creativity, but humanity itself. The final fight marked the end of the replacements' reign of terror and the beginning of a new era. One that celebrated individuality, creativity, and freedom. The Guardians of Originality had won, but they knew that their vigilance must continue, ensuring that such a threat never arose again. Chapter 21: The End. The world had changed. The Guardians of Originality had not only defeated the replacements, but also revealed a truth that would echo in the annals of history. Humanity had come close to losing half its population, their individuality, their creativity, their very essence. The aftermath of the victory was bittersweet. There was jubilation, relief, but also a collective mourning for those lost to the virus. Nations started the rebuilding process, distributing the cure globally, and slowly, but surely, the world began to heal. The Guardians of Originality were hailed as heroes. Max, Dorian, Leela, and Kali found themselves thrust into the spotlight, the faces of a global victory. However, they made it clear that their fight had been for everyone's right to be original, to be unique. They continued their efforts to promote originality and creativity, their influence now reaching a global scale. They were not just the Guardians of Originality, but also the Guardians of Humanity. The clone scientist, who had played a crucial role in their victory, chose to dedicate his life to creating, healing, and innovating, using his knowledge for the betterment of humanity. Meanwhile, people around the world started to embrace their individuality more openly. There was a newfound appreciation for artists, singers, writers, and all forms of unique talents. The world was learning from its near-fatal encounter, moving towards a society that celebrated rather than suppressed individuality. In the end, the Guardians of Originality's fight was not just about defeating the replacements. It was about championing a world where everyone had the freedom to be themselves, where every talent was celebrated, where creativity and individuality thrived. They had fought for this world and won. As the dust settled, a sense of hope prevailed. The world was moving forward, stronger and wiser. The replacements were defeated, and the people were free to be themselves. It was the end of a perilous journey and the beginning of a brighter future.